Many of you may be watching this video today and you're feeling angry, anxious, and you're not really sure whether or not you have the ability to complete your course. So naturally, like many of us, when we are faced with these situations, the only thing that comes to mind is to quit. But should you really quit? What should I consider in making this pivotal decision? Hi, my name is Uchandim Shungane, chartered accountant and learning strategist. In today's video, we'll be having a real talk and really establishing boundaries, but specifically looking at factors that we should consider in making an important decision whether you should quit or effectively change your course. Now, I'm hoping that I'm going to be helping you make more informed decisions. My job is not to sway you either way, but rather to give you 5 important factors that I think you should consider before you make the decision. Right. The first thing that we need to consider is our course aligned to our purpose. Now, often when I talk of purpose, I refer to it as the degree to which you are going to be useful in society one day. Or put it differently, how do you want to be useful in society? Now, there are a variety of ways that one can be useful. For example, you study medicine, and then ultimately, through years of hard work and professional practice, you can then practice as a doctor and help people with different ailments and help our society in all these health related issues. Another way could be you're passionate about business, you want to become a practitioner within businesses, you can become a chartered accountant like myself. Or you have a passion for singing and you can heal people, make them feel good via your voice. These are all different avenues. Naturally, what we try to look at when deciding our purpose is what are our interests? That's often a good way to think about it. What do I enjoy doing? What am I good at? And chances are, where you're good at something and you equally enjoy it, you're more likely to flourish or excel in it. You see, I was fortunate when I always realized that I had a passion for business. Then this was confirmed when I did a career assessment and really it outlined my interests and what I was good at. And I could see and narrow it down that the professions that would be aligned with my interests to be one day be involved in business were mainly chartered accountancy. Now, I really recommend if you haven't done this type of assessment, looking at your strengths and weaknesses, your interests, and your career paths, that you actually do it before making any decisions so that you can be clear on what do I enjoy, where can I add value, where are my skills, and so that you can really discover what your purpose is. Then, when it really hit me was when in 2016, to be precise, where I started being a poor student. At that time, I got my tax result and I actually got 17%. So, like many of you watching this video, I contemplated quitting. I didn't feel that I was good enough. The fact that I had failed so dismally was an indication that I had to let it go. Perhaps this accounting thing wasn't for me. I fast track 4 to 5 years down the line. I'm able to pass my honors record time, pass my master's record time. I'm able to become a chartered accountant, passing both my board exams record time. And effectively, I was then able to find my passion and be this person I am, which is helping achieve their academic potential. And now with an exciting job at the bank working as an IFRS specialist. All of these things would have not happened if I hadn't asked a fundamental question, right? And the question I really asked myself is, had my interests changed? I then soon realized that they hadn't, right? I was still passionate about business. Of course, accounting was difficult. I was struggling with it, but that didn't change the fact that I was passionate about business. The secondary question then I asked myself is, does my degree still help me achieve this purpose? And the answer was a resounding yes again. So then I had to be honest. And perhaps this is an introspection that you also need to do before you make the decision to quit. Number one, what is your purpose? And number two, does the degree that you're studying still align to that purpose? And to the extent that you answer yes to both of these questions, then often the problem is not the course or the lecturers, but it could just be yourself. And that's a difficult reality to face, that we also have to hold ourselves highly accountable for our actions and our performances. So I had realized that I wasn't actually studying in the correct format. I didn't have the right strategies in place. I never knew why I was studying the courses I was doing or what the correct strategy was to study these courses. And from an execution perspective and technique perspective, what was required of me. And so it came as no surprise when I didn't do well because I didn't have the correct plan, nor was I executing in the right way. Now, if you're not sure about what is this right strategy, how do you actually find the correct plan to study, check out our other video where I outline my secret study strategy that could help you if you're still having a knowledge gap on how to study. So, therefore, I say to you, before making the decision to quit, really understand that, do I know how to study for my course? Do I understand the actionable steps required to be successful, whether it means reading, post reading, doing the prescribed tutorials, exam technique? And have I effectively executed on these plans and on the system that is required? And to the extent that you haven't answered the affirmative to these questions, there's probably a gap within the execution or knowledge that you have that you need to fix. And rather fix that first before making the decision to quit. Right. So when I realized that and I fixed my strategy and I overcame these challenges, I then naturally rekindled my interest, because let's face it, when you start tackling problems and you start being successful, guess what? You start enjoying that course again. So I started enjoying accounting. And all it took was me sitting down with a lecturer, doing my research with past mentors and people who had passed, and then discovering where the gaps were in my strategy, fixing those, and then I was off on my way to becoming successful. But some of you might be asking me, but Chandi, what if the course I'm studying is not aligned to my purpose? You see, I might have studied this course because I was forced by my parents, or it was my second or third option, and I really wanted to be in varsity. I challenge you again, and I say that often our purpose really isn't linked necessarily to our profession. And that's okay, because more often than not, your purpose and passion, right, really take time for them to become your profession. Often the most successful individuals, what they often do is that they have a profession and they build up skills over time. As they perfect their passions, they then transition to having their professions be their passions. So, but they're not under pressure ultimately to make the change because they're comfortable, they have the security, they have the job, and then they can wait up until it's the right moment for them to make the change. And often, even with yourself, you might be studying science, but you want to be an actor. There's nothing stopping you from completing that science degree and then ultimately working, and then with a stable income, investing in your talents and going on auditions so that ultimately you can become the actor you want to be. Let's face it, acting is tough. Acting is unreliable, and solely focusing and putting all your eggs in that basket might not necessarily be a sustainable thing to do, especially as you look to have an income, look to be sustainable, and have your own peace of mind. So often we just need to bear in mind that skills can be obtained whether the course is directly incremental for us to achieve our goals. I found this as well in my matric studies. I studied science courses, but ultimately I ended up in a business related career. Now, the skills I learned in the science related courses, like for example, in life of time, and within physical science, for example, I learned how to think in a scientific manner. These skills are still relevant to me today. They make me different as a chartered accountant because I understand how to learn large volume of work in short periods of time. I'm equally able to think more in a scientific manner. All of these are skills that I acquired in a course that I try to find the skill sets within your chosen qualification. Understand that qualifications, or the majority of them in traditional institutions, have some type of skill attached to them. And when you are a skilled individual, you can make a bigger impact as you strive to be useful in society compared to someone who doesn't have a skill. So time in university studying a course is never wasted. there's always to be obtained. But of course, in the extreme scenario where your course doesn't offer any tangible skills, or where your course doesn't correlate directly to your passion, then of course, by all means, consider quitting in that instance. But don't let the fact that you're struggling or you're doing badly being the only justification for the fact that you're quitting. The second thing that I would look at is stop thinking about failure and success as being these opposite spectrums within the journey of life. Actually, what's the more accurate description is that failure and success go in tandem. Now, for me to be able to illustrate this point more effectively, let's take a step back and realize some of the most significant things that have happened in your life. Something as simple as walking that you take for granted today. When you were still a toddler, you had to battle and graft to learn the skill. For example, you were crawling, you fell, and you crawled and you fell, often embarrassing yourself in front of people. But you knew inherently within your human nature that you had to get the skill right. Everyone around you was walking. It seemed to be the most important thing, and you ultimately achieved that goal. Equally, if you see the successful individuals in society, I look at people like Jack Ma, the founder of Alibaba, rejected 3 times in university, yet he founded the biggest marketplace in the world, which is Alibaba. Then you look at the queen of talk show hosts. Oprah Winfrey actually got retrenched on her first talk show or talk video, yet today she's renowned as one of the best interviewing specialists, the best talk show host in the world. If you look at people like Thomas Edison, the founder and person who created the light bulb, failed over 1,000 times before he got that invention correct. Often failure is a prerequisite for you to become successful, right? Understand what failure isn't, not an indication of your potential. What failure basically means is that it's a snapshot at a point in time to reflect where you are in comparison to some prescribed benchmark of where you need to be. So, for example, the benchmark that we use in an academic setting is an exam or a test. So, when you fail, it simply means that your knowledge at that point in time was insufficient relative to the set benchmark that is required from you within that specific assessment. So, really, what you want to do when you fail is not attack yourself, demean yourself, and think of yourself as lesser than, but rather understand where are the gaps. Why didn't I fail? Understand why did I fail? Where are the gaps that I need to fill? How do I improve? A deep dive into your learning strategy, a deep dive in your preparation process. And often you find that it's specific things or specific processes that are not going the way that they're supposed to. And equally, sometimes it happens that you haven't failed enough. Because we understand that failure is the prerequisite for success, you have to fail. What I figured out when I was transitioning from a poor student to a good student is that the more practice questions I started to do, the more I started to fail. But the rate at which I was failing was very important because I was learning at the same rate. So where in the past where I would only start failing closer towards the test, so I hadn't experienced failure enough. So therefore, naturally, I failed dismally at the test. But now, when I started transitioning to be a good student, I was preparing well in advance, making sure every week I was up to date with my work, doing all the prescribed questions, consulting. And ultimately, what I found is that I'd failed so many times. I'd understood why I failed, consulted, and ultimately rectified those mistakes. By the time I got to the assessment, I was prepared. I had failed so many times that it was impossible for me to fail again. And that's really the benchmark. So then ultimately, I reached the benchmark or exceeded it. And it really was an indication of my willingness to prepare, my willingness to execute correctly, and diligently work at something. So I question you again, did you diligently work on your work assignments during the block? Did you study all the material? Did you consult? Did you adequately do all the prescribed materials, understanding why you got things wrong? If the answer is no to these, the problem is not the course, the problem is your approach. Rather focus your energies there. The third thing that I want to highlight, which is crucial, is that often it's not greener on the other side. When we make the decision, a difficult one at that, that we want to basically move away from the course that we're doing, often what happens is that we make that decision because we think that it will be greener on the other side. We hear all the stories of the people who are successful in other courses, and then we think that that could easily be me. I could easily be living my best life. So the natural inclination to fail in or to change your course or to transition increases dramatically. But when you then realize the important fact that your experience in the school system is but a subset of what you'll experience for the rest of your life as a professional, then you should think twice. You see, I had a friend of mine who we were studying chartered accountancy with, but they decided that, hang on, the course was demanding, it was stressful, and it was really something that didn't want to go through. So they ultimately quit, but then ended up working earlier than the required time. When they got to the job, they became so good because it was their passion. They did enjoy accounting, it was what they were supposed to do. But the frustration comes in as they become good at the job. They need to transition into senior managerial positions and grow in their profession, but they don't have the qualifications to enable them to make that transition. Now they start realizing that, shucks, they need the chartered accountancy degree that they neglected earlier on in their lives. So now they start regretting the fact that they're stuck in position, they're stuck in one place, they cannot grow. And this is what I'm talking about. Often we have to make sacrifices now as we are students that might not be pleasing, that might be demanding on our time and really not feel good. But in the long run, you suffer for 4 years now, at a minimum, hopefully, so that you can enjoy the rest of your career. And also, another thing that I want to highlight is that difficulty is inherent within all the courses. You might be struggling with accounting now and you think that maybe science is easier. Trust me, there's some level of difficulty in the sciences as well. The same applies to the arts. Wherever you may go, you'll find that each profession, each qualification has its own difficulty. Then, when I started realizing that, I picked up that what was relevant was not necessarily the course I was studying, because I would be facing or encounter the same challenges no matter where I went. What was important was for me to learn how to be pragmatic in my approaches, so that I could use these skill sets of how to learn, how to be pragmatic, how to be resourceful, to ultimately be successful later on in life. The fourth thing that I think is important is control the controllables. Now, often when we fail, a big reason for that is because we do not enjoy being uncomfortable. No one likes being uncomfortable. The fact that you will fail, you start thinking about, what will my parents say? What will my sponsors say? My friends will ridicule me. I might have been the first person in my community to go to university. Can't stand the shame that that will bring. So let me take the easy way out, change the course, or at least quit now before I'm embarrassed any further. What I started to realize is that often this fear of the unknown or things that I couldn't control was not justified. You see, in life, we always going to face encounters or challenges that are beyond what we can do. Think about losing a loved one. No one plans, no one enjoys it, but that is the reality of life. You can lose a loved one in an instant. How do you respond to that? You can sadly fall, get into an accident, you could lose your job, you could find yourself in a precarious situation. These are all unforeseen circumstances that life might throw at you. Does that mean you become defeated, you give up? Or does it mean that you have an opportunity to respond accordingly and learn the skills to become more resilient in life? I like to look at life using the latter approach, to say, I can't control what life throws at me, but I can control how I respond to it. So the same was true when I was a student. I couldn't control what the test would look like or what my ultimate outcome, whether I would pass or not in the assessment, would be. But I could control how prepared I was for the test. I could control whether I was consulting, preparing on time, making sure that I was filling in those gaps. the best way I could. That I often built up the natural confidence to do well in tests. Even though the test may have been difficult, I did my best. And I ultimately knew at the end of the day, whether the result came out unfavorable, I would still rest assured that I gave off my best. And that was enough. And that's what I took out from life, from university. University taught me that firstly, I needed to be. Secondly, that I need to understand that I couldn't control everything and that it was okay sometimes to have an unexpected result, so long as I could hold my head high, that I'd given my best. And these are skills that I still use today. Even as you are working as a professional, you'll understand that you win some, you lose some, even at work. Even if you're in business, you realize that sometimes you have good months, sometimes you don't. These are all important lessons to learn. So instead of running away from the lesson and thinking that quitting is the answer, embrace the challenge, learn from it, become more resilient, develop your character. You'll be amazed at what type of person you can be. The fifth important thing is that you can do anything, but sadly, you can't do everything. I had to learn this the hard way. Naturally, as a person who was a prefect at school, I tended to be involved extensively, whether it was in leadership positions, starting a business, getting involved as a mentor, a tutor. These were all things that I was naturally passionate about. But I rushed and didn't realize that I firstly had to do what was important. The main thing that I was in university for was to become an effective student so that I could be a chartered accountant. At some point, I forgot that I was focusing all of these extramural activities without actually understanding the system and the course first. So often when you find yourself in a difficult position and you're not doing well, simplify your life as much as possible. I naturally found that I had this ability to do well and I could now tap into it more effectively. So often that's the one thing that you can also do. Declutter your life, simplify it, go back to basics. For example, just be a student. Start there. And then once you've perfected the art of being a student, how to learn, how to execute, all of these things, then you can think about potentially improving your other soft skills like speaking, networking, and being involved in things that can improve your career. But ultimately, your job is to be a student and be that first. You can't do everything. Okay, cool. Hopefully, guys, now you have the tools in order to make a more informed decision about whether you should stop, quit, or change your course. Now, at the end of the day, I want to leave you with these parting words that you have the ability to do it. I can't emphasize this enough, that it's not a coincidence that you find yourself in these learning institutions. Often you've competed with thousands, and that you made it into that course means that you have the ability to finish it. I reject the notion that people don't have the ability to finish their courses. You wouldn't have been admitted if you didn't have the ability. It's always a question of understanding the system, understanding the right approach to use for that specific course. And once you've done that, positioning yourself through having the right resources from lecturers and tutors, from being self-disciplined to execute on the plan, being selfish enough to put yourself first, simplifying your life. All of these are become important tools for you to become successful. And if you do that, you will ultimately enjoy your experience as a student and actually reap the rewards that you duly deserve. And that's why I want to tell you today that don't be quick to quit and regret a small decision today that can escalate into something larger tomorrow as you think about your career. I know you can do it. You have the skills. You just need to believe in yourself. Until we meet again, hope to see you soon. Let's chat in the comment section. Give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video. We'll see you next time. Bye.